The Babylon 5 live-action reboot is dead. But what happened? Welcome to SciTrek, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. So I recently told you in a video that plans for a Babylon 5 live-action reboot, a reimagining of the original series, is now not going to happen. Back in 2001, JMS announced that he was working with the CW to bring us this new show, that they were planning to film it and they were planning to get it on our screens really quickly. But 3 years later, we still have heard nothing. So what happened? Why didn't it happen? Because we got The Road Home, the animated movie, and it did well. Surely that should have helped Babylon 5 live action reboot. But did it actually harm it? So first of all, let's tell us the story. In 1998, we got the final episodes of the original 5 seasons of Babylon 5. We then got a couple of very cool TV movies and a spin-off series that failed very quickly. But Babylon 5 has continued to be, among sci-fi fans in particular, one of the great shows. It was actually conceived as 5 seasons from the beginning. It was a proper space opera. It was dramatic. It told a story in a way we'd not really seen before. And to be honest, I did a video not long ago saying how Babylon 5 inspired sci-fi for 2 decades following it. So when news that it was going to get a reboot came along, a lot of fans were very excited. A lot of fans were not. But we'll come back to that in a minute, because let's talk about sort of the business side of this and why this show didn't end up on the CW. So I should say that the CW is a show that actually did originally show Babylon 5 when it was called whatever it was called back then. So CW was technically the home of Babylon 5. And actually, Mark Pedowitz, which was the guy that was in charge of the CW at the time, was a big fan. JMS has actually talked about how Mark Pedowitz, back when the original Babylon 5 was being created, always wanted to know what was going to happen next. And as soon as the edit was done, they'd have to send him a tape sort of thing so he could see it early before everyone else. It's fair to say he was a Babylon 5 fan. And it was him that wanted to bring back Babylon 5 for a new audience. But in January 2022, it was announced that the CW was up for sale. And actually, a company called Nexstar was going to be taking over. They ended up buying 75% of the CW, with Paramount and Warner Brothers owning a share of the other 25%. Now, Paramount and Warner Brothers will continue to make content for the CW, but under new ownership, they very quickly began to change direction. If you are enjoying the video, don't forget to like, subscribe with the bell notification, all those things. But also go over to patreon.com/SciTrek. That is where most of our videos do premiere first, and you get to see them without all the adverts for a small fee that really helps out the channel. New owners said that the network needed to be run in a far more responsible way, that a lot of the TV shows on the network cost twice as much as a lot of TV shows on other networks. And if you're honest, you can see that in a lot of the TV shows they were creating for DC. The Arrowverse series were expensive to produce for a TV show. But actually, if you watch Superman and Lois, my God, that's a good show. And really expensive to produce. So I can understand where Nexstar were coming from. And only a couple of months after the original announcement, in May 2022, several shows were cancelled. A lot of the DC Universe stuff was cancelled, and actually only recently the Superman series was also cancelled, ending the Arrowverse forever. And then the hammer blow that really probably ended Babylon 5 ever appearing on the CW again happened in October of 2022. Nexstar bought the 75%, not for money, by the way. They just agreed to take on $100 million of the debt, something Paramount and actual Warner Brothers were very happy about. But they took over, and then Mark Pedowitz resigned. Following that, the CW started to announce that it wanted to do shows for maybe a slightly older generation. They wanted to do sort of procedural cop shows and more reality TV, stuff that was cheaper to make but had really good numbers. And they had signed a big deal to show golf and other sporting events. The CW now is going in a completely different direction, and Babylon 5 just doesn't really fit that new direction. But Warner Brothers didn't give up, and I was able to exclusively tell you on SciTrek that they were exploring other options. That apparently Apple were interested, but apparently Apple are interested in everything. And then Amazon were interested. Apparently, Amazon saw Babylon 5 as a possible show for the Freevee network. They are actively looking for new shows for Freevee, and they just felt that maybe lower budget Babylon 5 series would have fit perfectly. And to be honest, I can see it. It was around this time that Babylon 5 The Road Home came out. Now, initially, that seemed to actually strengthen the sales pitch because The Road Home DVD, Blu-ray, etc. sales did really well. People seemed to like it. But the problem was it underlined the fundamental issue with a reboot of the original Babylon 5 series. A lot of fans didn't want it. They look at The Road Home with the original characters in and voiced by a lot of the original actors. Sadly, a lot of them have also passed away. And they remembered the Babylon 5 series. And they started saying, can't we have a continuation? I don't want a hard reboot of a show I loved. We don't need a hard reboot of the show we loved. And that message was heard by executives at Amazon and Apple, etc. They came back and just said, look, we love Babylon 5. We'd love to have something to do with it, but it's not going to work as a hard reboot. So does that mean we could get something else within the Babylon 5 universe? Well, yes and no. No, in that it's very unlikely we're going to get anything else from the Babylon 5 universe because JMS said it himself. People don't want to buy it. They wanted to buy Babylon 5 because that's the name people know. They don't really think it's a sort of franchisable show. But yes, because The Road Home did do well. And we could get to see more animated movies and maybe even an animated series spinning off from that. Warner Brothers have a bit of a business model for this. They've been doing it with DC movies for years, and they always do really well. They're animated and produced relatively cheaply, if I'm honest. But because they do all of the movies and series, etc., using the same technology, it's efficient. They can produce them very quickly. They can produce them very secretly. We saw that with Road Home. Nobody knew it was coming out until about a couple of months before we had it in our hands. And they can produce quite a lot of them. Babylon 5, The Road Home, it did do very well. And it opened the door to potential reboots, maybe, in that they can do the different universes. I think that's what JMS was thinking about when he wrote it, if I'm honest, for the live action series. But people will not accept a live action rebooted Babylon 5. It would have a lot of negativity thrown at it before it was ever released. And to be honest, it's almost destined to fail. But animated movies based around the original, being voiced by as many of the original actors as possible, and maybe even using AI to replicate some of the voices of others, if, that's necessary, would be interesting for fans. We would love to dip our toes back into the universe of Babylon 5, maybe see some prequels or see some stuff from some of the time gaps we had within the series. I'd love to personally see more of the Minbari War, etc. Now that would excite fans. And that seems to be what Warner Brothers are working towards now, in partnership with Amazon, who would sell these like they sold The Road Home. I actually think that is going to be the future of Babylon 5. And the live action reboot was probably not the greatest idea in the first place. But guys, what do you think? Get into the comments. Is Babylon 5 reboot a brilliant idea or a terrible idea? I'd love for you to tell me. And is it going to be a shame that we're not going to see what JMS would have done with this? At the end of the day, now he's had a few more decades of development and having this idea bounce around in his head. Isn't it going to be a bit of a shame that we're not going to see what he'd have come up with? I think so. But guys, get into the comments and tell me exactly what you think. If you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit all those bell buttons and things so you never miss any of our new videos. But also go to patreon.com/SciTrek if you are desperate to see the videos first, because almost all of them premiere on there up to a day before they do on YouTube. So go check that out. Also, check out our dedicated website, scitrek.co.uk. We do articles based on a lot of our videos, so go and check that out too. As always, please stay safe, and I'll see you next time.